I was orchestrating a flawless afternoon at my boutique, Hartwell Co, a chic emporium I'd built from the ground up, when my phone buzzed with a message that threatened to shatter my perfectly curated world. I was assisting Mrs. Lorraine Radcliffe, a regular whose discerning taste matched her impeccable style, as she selected a silk scarf wrapped in our signature shimmering silver paper. I smiled politely, my perfectly manicured hand deftly holding a fabric sample, when I noticed the unmistakable vibration of my phone. Glancing surreptitiously at the screen, I read Trevor Stone's text. It was as bold and venomous as it was banal. "Vanessa, I'm done. I'm leaving you and heading to Miami with Lola. I've already drained our joint account. Ha! Enjoy your little world." A cold, exhilarating rush of shock and satisfaction surged through me. My perfectly sculpted lips curved into a subtle, knowing smile. No tear, tremor, just a predatory calm that belied the storm swirling inside. Trevor's cruelty, so brazen and callous, had finally pushed him into the open. I composed a swift reply, a message as icy as it was final. Good luck. No more, no less. It was the end of his pathetic delusions and the beginning of my meticulously orchestrated comeback. As Mrs. Radcliffe admired her new scarf, I tucked my phone away, my mind racing. I'd suspected something was amiss for months. The late nights that never matched his dwindling deposits, the inexplicable password changes on his phone, and the sudden, almost desperate obsession with his appearance. Hours at the gym, a wardrobe recalibrated to recapture a fleeting youth he could no longer claim. His transformation was as ostentatious as it was desperate, and I had quietly been gathering evidence while he played the fool. I excused myself with a practiced smile as Mrs. Radcliffe departed, the silver-wrapped package clutched like a secret between us. My heart beat steadily, not in fear but in anticipation. At that moment, Trevor Stone's crude text was nothing more than a spark to the dry tinder of my long-held suspicions, and I was ready to set the whole affair ablaze. In the dim light of my private office behind the boutique, I retraced the silent breadcrumbs of his betrayal. Every late-night dinner reservation, every clandestine hotel receipt, and every cryptic bank transaction had been meticulously recorded in my hidden ledger. Trevor's extravagant claims of working late were exposed by the extravagant bills from upscale restaurants and secret rendezvous documented on our shared credit cards. I recalled only 3 months ago when I found an envelope tucked behind a magazine on the coffee table. Inside lay a receipt from an exclusive bistro addressed to 2 lovers, whose names I soon connected with his rapid metamorphosis. With a steely resolve, I created a separate bank account, a sanctuary for my hard-won money, and transferred every spare penny from our joint account into its safe embrace. The funds Trevor had left untouched were only enough to stave off immediate suspicion, while the lion's share lay hidden, meticulously catalogued alongside damning evidence of his indiscretions. The irony was delicious. While Trevor was busy chasing an illusion of eternal youth with a flirtatious 20-year-old temptress named Lola Monroe, I was busy ensuring that every cent of our finances was secure. I had been preparing for this moment for months, and now the evidence was as undeniable as the taste of revenge. I scanned the screen of my phone as Trevor's following text pinged in, a haughty, taunting message that dripped with condescension. "You know, Vanessa, you're not getting any younger. At least your little shop will keep you busy while I live the life I deserve." My pulse quickened, not from hurt, but from the raw, intoxicating thrill of turning his treachery against him. His arrogance was the final piece in my puzzle of vindication. I saved every derogatory word, every self-satisfied ha and LOL, all destined to be the weapon that would dismantle his facade of power in court. I knew then that this wasn't just about money. It was about pride, identity, and the right to reclaim my life from a man too consumed by his decadence to notice the empire I'd built with my 2 hands. I could almost taste the sweet irony of his impending downfall, which I would orchestrate with elegance and ruthless precision. Before the evening's close, I retreated to the sanctuary of my home, a sprawling, ivy-clad manor that had belonged to my grandmother, safeguarded in my name despite Trevor's incessant, ill-conceived suggestions to make it a real home for both of us. While sorting through a stack of old wedding photos, I paused at the image of Trevor, his once handsome features now distorted by the ravages of a midlife crisis. In that sepia-toned photograph, he still bore the confident smile of a man who believed he could conquer the world. His recent texts and debauched behavior revealed a caricature of that once promising figure, a man desperately clinging to the vestiges of youth by chasing after Lola's seductive allure. I reread the texts again, and the venom in his words was now transformed into a roadmap for my counterstrike. He thinks his departure is a grand, liberating exit, I mused, but he has no idea he's stepping into my trap. With a slow, deliberate motion, I dialed the number of Derek Langston, the sharp, no-nonsense lawyer who had advised me as soon as I'd discovered the first hints of Trevor's duplicity. His deep voice, always measured yet unmistakably confident, answered promptly. "Vanessa, I've been reviewing your evidence," Derek said, his tone a mix of admiration and determination. "We have a mountain of proof, the receipt for that extravagant dinner, the credit card charges, the deliberate emptiness of the joint account. I'm ready to file for divorce and freeze his assets. Shall we arrange for service in Miami?" I paused, a wicked smile playing on my lips as I imagined Trevor, cocky and deluded, basking in the misguided thrill of his new life on the sun-soaked streets of Miami. "Yes," I replied coolly. "Let him think he's won his little escape. The papers are to be served first thing tomorrow. I want him to fully appreciate that his last act of betrayal sparked my entire life ablaze."
Derek's laughter crackled over the line. "You're a marvel, Vanessa. I'll take care of everything. It's time Trevor learned that no one messes with Hartwell and gets away with it."
I felt a heady mix of satisfaction and anticipation as our conversation concluded. Every moment of our 12-year marriage had led to this incendiary climax, a moment when his crude text message became the catalyst for his public undoing and my private triumph. Once so meticulous in his professional facade, Trevor now sported a desperate new wardrobe, tight, designer ensembles that clung to his aging frame in a vain attempt to recapture the vigor of his youth. Every morning, as he adjusted his slicked-back hair and applied a cologne that reeked of artificial masculinity, he seemed more like a caricature than the man I once knew. His texts grew increasingly audacious. In one, he taunted, "Vanessa, I'm in Miami, living my best life with Lola. How's the little shop holding you back in your old age?" In another, he wrote, "I guess some of us aren't cut out for forever. Enjoy your solitude." Lola Monroe, his scandalously young mistress, was as intoxicating as she was provocative. I had first encountered her at his company's lavish holiday party, a radiant, almost otherworldly presence with eyes that sparkled like forbidden promises. Her laughter was a silken murmur that trailed behind her like a secret, and the way she casually touched Trevor's arm sent shivers of jealousy and disdain down my spine. I watched, hidden in the margins of the party's gaiety, as she revelled in the adoration of every man in the room, her every gesture dripping with sensuality and mischief. I continued to run Hartwell Co with the poise and precision of a seasoned warrior queen. I had become a force unto myself, armed with proof of his debauchery and the unwavering determination to rise from his betrayal. The local banks, already suspicious of the irregularities in our joint finances, quickly became unwitting allies in my plan. I contacted the bank's fraud department, speaking in measured, assertive tones as I recounted Trevor's reckless use of our shared credit card. "Yes," I told the representative, Miranda. "There have been unauthorized charges for first-class flights to Miami and lavish hotel reservations at the Royal Palm. I need him removed as an authorized user immediately." Miranda's voice, laced with professionalism and a hint of satisfaction, assured me that every last trace of Trevor's financial folly would be eradicated. As the digital trail of his betrayal was methodically erased, I couldn't help but savor the delicious irony. The money he'd so recklessly flaunted would soon be out of his reach forever. His lavish trips, his nights drenched in the neon glow of Miami's underbelly, would be rendered futile by the frozen assets and the cold, hard evidence of his own making. I found solace in the rhythmic cadence of my work. Every evening, as I locked up the boutique with the quiet dignity of someone who had already won the war, I allowed myself a small indulgence, a glass of exquisite red wine, its rich bouquet mingling with the heady scent of leather-bound ledgers and fresh inventory receipts. Every day past was a step closer to the reckoning, a public exposure of Trevor's vanity, and a final, irrevocable severance of our intertwined lives. In hushed whispers and knowing glances, the women of our community began to speak of Hartwell Co, not merely as a boutique, but as a sanctuary for those who had been wronged, a beacon of strength in a world where men like Trevor thought they could toy with hearts and finances alike. The air was thick with anticipation as I watched Trevor, once the embodiment of self-assured arrogance, fidget in a designer suit that now seemed almost too tight for his disintegrating frame. His eyes darted nervously, as if searching for an escape route that no longer existed. Opposite me sat his newly acquired paramour, Lola Monroe, her presence a stark reminder of his wanton pursuit of youth. Dressed in a figure-hugging ensemble that left little to the imagination, she exuded an air of provocative innocence, a siren whose allure had cost Trevor everything. The gallery was abuzz with whispers, the scandal of his actions seeping into every corner of the room. Derek Langston rose to address the judge with an air of steely resolve. "Your Honor, what we have before us is not merely a case of financial mismanagement. It is a deliberate act of betrayal. My client, Vanessa Hartwell, has painstakingly documented every instance of Mr. Stone's improprieties, from unauthorized credit card charges to the deliberate emptying of a joint account intended for our family's stability. We present this evidence not to shame, but to ensure that justice is meted out for every moment of deceit." My heart pounded as she raised an eyebrow at one particularly scathing message from Trevor. "BTW, I used our joint card to book our flights and hotels. Consider it my parting gift." A murmur of outrage rippled through the courtroom. As I watched Trevor squirm under the weight of his words, I felt an almost physical surge of vindication. Trevor's defense lawyer attempted to downplay my meticulous record-keeping. While there may have been irregularities, he argued, my client contends that these were acts of impulsive passion in the wake of marital discord. His words fell flat in the face of irrefutable evidence. I could see Trevor's face contorting with a mixture of shame and panic, his carefully constructed mask of control now crumbling before the judge's eyes. "Mr. Stone," the judge intoned, "you admitted to emptying our joint account via text message, a confession as clear as day. You also confessed to using our shared credit to fund your extramarital escapades. How do you plead to these charges?" Trevor's voice trembled as he mumbled, "I was trying to start fresh, to escape." The courtroom fell silent, every eye fixed on him as he struggled to complete his feeble justification. Here was the man who had once considered me weak, a relic of a past life, now reduced to a quivering shadow of his former self. The judge delivered her final verdict with the clarity of someone who had seen through every guise of deception. In light of the documented evidence and the calculated actions of Mr. Stone, all shared assets are to be frozen pending the final dissolution of the marriage. Furthermore, any funds removed from the joint account must be returned immediately. A hushed chorus of murmurs and sympathetic nods greeted her ruling. Trevor's eyes darted in panic, his veneer of control utterly obliterated. At that moment, the courtroom became an arena where every whispered secret and every illicit transaction was laid bare for the world to see. And I, Vanessa Hartwell, stood tall, unbowed, unapologetic, and incandescent in my quiet triumph. In the days and weeks that followed the courtroom showdown, the fallout from Trevor's betrayal spread like wildfire. Local gossip turned into national headlines, and my once quiet boutique became a symbol of resilience and empowerment, a haven for women who had been wronged by the cruelty of men who thought themselves invincible. I poured myself into Hartwell Co with renewed fervor. Every sale, every carefully curated display of luxurious handbags, scarves, and couture dresses became an act of defiance, a declaration that I was more than the sum of Trevor's failures. I began hosting exclusive evening events at the boutique, transforming it into a seductive den of sophistication where women gathered to share their stories, triumphs, and, yes, even their salacious secrets. One sultry Friday evening, as the city's neon glow seeped through the large front windows, I prepared for an event that would mark the next phase of my rebirth. The boutique was filled with soft amber lighting, plush velvet seating, and tables adorned with crystal decanters of rich red wine. Amid the crowd, I noticed a striking figure in a curve-hugging dress, a woman with eyes flickered with mischief and regret. It was Lola Monroe, the same Lola who had lured Trevor away with promises of unbridled passion and eternal youth. For a moment, our eyes locked across the room. Her expression was a complex cocktail of defiance, sorrow, and perhaps even remorse. As if compelled by a force stronger than either of us, she made her way toward me. Standing in a quiet corner near a display of meticulously arranged accessories, she whispered, "Vanessa, I owe you an apology." Her voice trembled, a mix of vulnerability and unspoken guilt. "I believed everything Trevor told me, about you, about us. I was naive, thinking I could play a part in his fantasies without consequences." Her apology, delivered in a hushed, almost conspiratorial tone, sent a shiver down my spine. For years, I had been the one scrutinizing every secret, every salacious detail of Trevor's double life. And here was Lola, the unwitting accomplice in his downfall, seeking absolution in my presence. "Lola, you're young and you're beautiful," I replied softly, the words laden with both reproach and understanding. "But remember, desire built on deception is doomed to crumble. You let him manipulate you, and in doing so, you became a pawn in a game that was never meant for you." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears as she nodded, the gravity of her actions dawning upon her. "I know," she murmured. "I'm trying to find my own way now." For a brief, charged moment, our shared history of betrayal, manipulation, and unintended complicity hung in the air like a delicate, bittersweet perfume. In that instant, I realized that my victory wasn't solely about reclaiming what Trevor had stolen. It was about reclaiming my narrative, and in turn, giving others the courage to break free from toxic cycles. My boutique had evolved from a sanctuary of commerce into a haven of empowerment, and every whispered secret shared within its walls became a stepping stone toward liberation. Local newspapers and gossip columns reveled in the salacious details, the audacity of a man who emptied his joint account for a fling with a 20-year-old seductress, the steely resolve of a woman who turned betrayal into an empire. I was invited to speak at women's business conferences, and my once private vendetta had now become an inspiring manifesto for empowerment. At one such conference, held in a sleek, glass-walled auditorium buzzing with anticipation, I recounted my story before an audience of ambitious entrepreneurs and determined dreamers. I spoke not of bitterness, but of strategy, the power of preparation, of protecting one's assets, and of never underestimating the strength of a woman scorned.
Marriage, I explained, is supposed to be a partnership, a merging of souls, finances, and futures. But when one partner chooses deceit over loyalty, it's not a loss. It's an opportunity. An opportunity to reinvent, to reclaim, and ultimately, to rise above the ashes of betrayal. The room erupted in applause as I concluded, my eyes shining with the quiet triumph of someone who had transformed humiliation into a catalyst for growth. Every challenge, every whispered insult from Trevor's texts had become a stepping stone toward my own success. My boutique, once a single storefront, had blossomed into a chain of high-end locations, a testament to my relentless drive and indomitable spirit. And as the years passed, I watched with a mixture of pity and satisfaction as Trevor's world crumbled further. His attempts at reclaiming dignity only led him down darker paths. Once the confident, if deluded master of his own destiny, he was now a cautionary tale whispered about in hushed tones. A man undone by his own vanity and greed. I kept one final memento of our turbulent past. A framed screenshot of his final text message, a crude epitaph to our failed union. Beneath it, in elegant script, I inscribed, "Success is the sweetest revenge." Every time I looked at it, I was reminded that while he had tried to write the ending to our story, it was I who had rewritten the narrative, and in doing so, had set myself free. In the wake of the divorce, life took on a new, almost sensual rhythm. My days were filled with the heady perfume of success and the tantalizing promise of reinvention. Hartwell Co. expanded into a multi-location empire, each boutique a jewel in the crown of my burgeoning business empire. I began to collaborate with designers, host exclusive trunk shows, and even mentor young entrepreneurs who sought the secret to my resilience. I reinvented myself in every facet of my life. I embraced my sensuality with unapologetic fervor, a woman in full bloom, comfortable in her skin, unafraid to revel in the power of her allure. I adorned myself in bold colors, daring cuts, and statement accessories that left no one indifferent. Every look, every movement was a declaration. I was in control, and I was irresistible. I attended galas where the champagne flowed as freely as the whispered confidences of powerful women. At one particularly lavish soirée, amid the soft strains of a jazz quartet and the shimmering reflections of crystal chandeliers, I caught the eye of a mysterious, silver-haired art dealer named Julian Moreau. His presence was magnetic, a blend of old-world charm and modern intrigue. Over glasses of the finest vintage, our conversation meandered from art to ambition, and the air between us pulsed with an intoxicating mix of intellect and desire. "Vanessa," he murmured, as our eyes met over the rim of his glass, "you have not only survived, but thrived. Your transformation is breathtaking. Tell me, what is the secret to such passionate reinvention?" I smiled, the memory of Trevor's callous texts still fresh, yet now transformed into fuel for my fire. "The secret," I replied softly, "is knowing that betrayal isn't the end. It's merely the beginning of something far more exquisite." I took every hurtful word, every underhanded move, and I turned it into a stepping stone toward the life I always deserved. Julian's admiration was genuine, and as the evening drew to a close, he offered a promise laced with both mystery and possibility. A promise that the next chapter of my life would be as thrilling as it was unexpected. Yet even in the midst of burgeoning new romances and an empire that continued to expand, the echoes of Trevor's betrayal never fully faded. I would sometimes find myself alone in the quiet after the boutique's last customer had left, and I'd replay his text messages like a forbidden symphony. Each crude remark, each arrogant "ha," was a reminder of the man who had once tried to define me by his cruelty. But those memories were no longer chains. They were the very fuel that propelled me forward. I began to host private events where women shared their own stories of betrayal and liberation. Raw, unfiltered nights of catharsis that blended laughter with tears, vulnerability with triumph. In those evenings, I watched as scars transformed into badges of honor, and as the collective strength of wounded hearts kindled a spark of hope for a brighter, more assertive future. Months turned into years, and the scandal that had once made headlines became a mere footnote in a story of triumph and transformation. Trevor Stone's name was now synonymous with failure, a cautionary tale recounted over bitter cocktails in dimly lit bars. His desperate attempts to rebuild his shattered identity only led him deeper into the abyss of regret and self-loathing. I would occasionally glimpse his image in the tabloids, a caricature of a man undone by his own vanity and greed. Hartwell Co. had grown into a multi-location phenomenon, its sleek storefronts a testament to the indomitable spirit of reinvention. I spearheaded collaborations with renowned fashion designers, launched an exclusive online platform, and even began mentoring young, ambitious women determined to forge their own paths. It was during one of these hectic, exhilarating days that I received another unexpected message on my phone. The screen lit up with a familiar name. Trevor Stone. My heart skipped, not out of longing, but out of a long congealed mix of curiosity and disdain. His message was brief, almost pitiable. Vanessa, you ruined everything. I never meant for it to end like this. I stared at the screen, memories of his arrogant texts and his pathetic final moments in court flooding back. With a trembling hand, I typed a response, each keystroke a final punctuation mark on his faded delusions. Trevor, you didn't ruin anything. You ruined yourself. I built an empire while you chased shadows. I hit send, the finality of my words echoing in the silent corridors of my mind. In that moment, I understood that true victory wasn't about destroying the other person. It was about reclaiming your own power and rewriting your narrative on your own terms. I had transformed betrayal into beauty, heartbreak into hope, and cruelty into a catalyst for change. My life was no longer defined by the ghosts of a failed marriage or the bitter remnants of Trevor's disdain. It was defined by the brilliance of my own resurgence. I raised a glass of champagne to the stars, toasting silently to every woman who had ever been underestimated, every soul that had been crushed by betrayal, and every heart that had found the courage to rise from the ashes. Years later, as I prepared to celebrate the 5th anniversary of my liberation, I looked back on the tumultuous journey that had led me here. Hartwell Co. was now an internationally acclaimed brand, its story featured in glossy magazines and celebrated on television. At my anniversary gala, a lavish affair held in a grand historic mansion draped in velvet and candlelight, I took the stage before an audience of influential businesswomen, aspiring entrepreneurs, and even a few repentant souls from my past. In that moment, I felt the presence of every woman who had ever been underestimated, every heart that had been trampled by cruelty. As I descended the stage, I caught sight of a familiar figure in the crowd, a woman whose gaze was both hesitant and hopeful. It was Simone, the once fragile soul who had found strength in our shared narrative. She approached me, her eyes glistening with gratitude. "Vanessa," she whispered, "you've shown me that my past does not define me, that I can be more than the pain I've endured." I embraced her warmly, the two of us living proof that every ending could be transformed into a glorious new beginning. I am Vanessa Hartwell, the woman who turned betrayal into beauty, transformed cruelty into a catalyst for empowerment, and learned that true seduction begins with the love and respect you hold for yourself.